Hello, everybody. It's Khaled, day 20 something maybe of Corona lockdown. I hope you guys are doing okay. And I'm maybe trying to help my own sanity and perhaps entertain some of you by giving you another video essay on politics. This is probably going to be a long one, maybe a little bit boring. Maybe just go and watch The Tiger King. It's pretty entertaining. I saw it. But if you just need to kill a bunch of time, maybe go to sleep, I could just talk to you about my topic for today, which is choosing a politics. What I mean by that is that I feel like most people have just absorbed the politics at hand or the politics around them, whatever felt right or whatever everybody else seems to be doing, and assume that this is a correct and useful politics. And I don't think that's an acceptable way of doing this thing, especially because the stakes are so high and the outcomes are so important. If we say that capitalism is grinding people down, oppressing them, exploiting them, and we want to change the state of affairs, holy shit, the stakes are high. And I don't find it acceptable, and nor should anybody else, to say, you know what, the method that we get there, the method that we dismantle the system and install something better, something kinder, that allows people to flourish, that it doesn't matter. Like, we shouldn't focus on that. Let's just focus on the objective, like fantasize about it, and that'll get us there. We have to be practical. We have to be pragmatic in what we do. And what I'm proposing is we figure out how to choose our politics in a systematic way that doesn't depend on personal preferences. If you notice the conversations that happen around choosing a politics, people, for example, argue about we should do class politics or we should do identity politics. Like, these conversations generally don't have a basis. Like, there's no way of actually measuring whose argument is right or wrong. It's like a conversation about which color is the best color. The only time like people rely on a basis, it's like like interpreted historical precedent. This is what Marx said 200 years ago. This is what this movement did 50 years ago. And people interpret it through their own lens and try to lend credence to their claims about their politics and whether it's good or bad. A couple of things. All those people failed. Okay? So who the fuck cares? Two, your interpretation of it is highly subjective, and people will fundamentally disagree about that. So again, it doesn't get us anywhere. It's just picking a color. So while historical precedent is important, reading kind of the thought and analysis of other people is great. Like, nobody's a prophet. There's no historical precedent that's absolutely true, and we need to hold on to it. What we need is to pick the right politics for the moment based on some meaningful criteria. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to propose like a model that we can use. And this could be completely wrong, but at least the proposal to try and build a framework by which we measure politics, a basis by which we can have these conversations, should utterly be a project that we engage in. And this is hopefully a starting point. So let's start with like a quick definition. Like, what's a politics? To my mind, it's relatively simple. It's a means to an end. I want to get to point B. I'm at point A. Politics gets me there. It's a set of Ideology is like a way of thinking about the world and a set of practices that actually can succeed in moving me from one position to the other. In this case, point B is the dismantlement of the entire capitalist system and putting in place a socialist order. So that's what a politics is meant to do, and it should have one kind of overarching quality, and that quality is how efficacious it is. How good is it at getting us from point A to point B? And the reason that I use the word efficacy here, efficacious as opposed to effective, is because the distinction between those two, like by way of example, is let's say I want to lose 50 pounds and I need to lose 50 pounds. But let's say I want to do that. I can go and try to do the most effective route, which might be like, hey, eat like 1,000 calories a day, exercise 4 hours a day, do X, Y, and Z, whatever, like this maximal thing. And I could do that for maybe 2 days and then I give up. I don't want to do that. That means that even though it's maximally effective, it's not efficacious because it doesn't take into consideration like a bunch of other things. It doesn't take into consideration the context of who I am as a person, the environment that I'm in, the time that I have. So putting together an efficacious weight loss program would like take that stuff into consideration, my personality, my preferences, say, okay, do like 30 minutes of exercise every day, drop your calories down a little bit, and like you get one cheat day a week, just whatever, some bullshit like that. And it'll take longer, but it'll get me there. Okay? So that's the distinction between effectiveness and efficaciousness. And a politics needs to be maximally efficacious. So we have to think, okay, what is the most practical set of trade-offs that we need to make, considering what our goal is and considering what our situation is in order to get there. Okay? Now, what politics is not, in my opinion, it's not a moral posture. Okay? The ideology and the practices that you adopt in order to get to your destination doesn't matter. Like there's nothing moral about doing specific sets of practices that don't work. If the only thing that I care about, the only thing that I should be judging somebody about, like in terms of their political outlook, is what are their goals, and do they match mine? And two, are their practices efficacious or not? Is their ideology and practices, do they actually get us to where we want to get to? And if somebody has the same goal as I do, great. But then the politics that they recommend to get there are shitty, then that person is fundamentally an enemy. They are a villain. Unless I can convince them to do something efficacious, they're going around and trying to convince people of wasting their time. Okay? And we can't afford that. So yeah, like your politics is not a moral posture. You saying I practice this and that, and if you don't practice it, then you're morally suspect. That's a nonsense argument that people use because they want to push a certain agenda. Making moral claims about your politics is garbage. Okay? It's just your objective, and then how effective it is. That should be an important measure for judging you. The other thing about politics, it's not like a totalizing solution. There is nothing that's going to address every single problem for every single person. It is a huge set of trade-offs, again, that takes into consideration what you're trying to do and the context that you're in. And based on that, picks exactly the best thing to go after and what things to ignore. And even the things that you ignore, you have to be anxious and actively conscious about those because they tend to seep in and distract you from your primary effort, the thing that you should be maximally focused on. So that's what politics are and what they're not. And based on that, like, you shouldn't have any problem saying, okay, we should do this. This thing that we've been doing for a long time fucking sucks. Let's get rid of it. Oh, a bunch of people aren't going to be happy with that because they love doing this or they love believing in this. Sorry. Entertaining a bunch of people's personal preferences, even though they're rational, even though they're counterproductive, is suicide. It's dooming your project to failure. If these people can't explain how their shit works and why it works well, then they either need to change their opinion or they need to get the fuck out. Sorry. You got to be mature about this. We're trying to get something done. So, why is it important to choose wisely? Why is it important to take a few breaths, look at our situation, and choose? Primarily because of the nature of the project that we're in. We have a huge power disparity. And when you have a lot of power, you have a lot of margin for error. You can do shitty stuff. It doesn't matter. You fuck up, you just throw more of your near infinite resources at the problem and you can solve it. When you don't have a lot of power, you don't have margin. You don't have margin at all. The metaphor that I've used before is that one guy is in a speedboat and you have a canoe with a bunch of people in it. The guy in the speedboat can get drunk a bunch, can pass out. All he has to do is sort of wake up every once in a while, point the boat in the right direction, and he'll probably win. You, with 6 of your friends in a canoe, you can't afford to get drunk, you can't afford to stop working, and you sure as hell can't afford to row out of rhythm and in different directions. You need to coordinate, you need to pick something, make a decision about where you're trying to go, and make sure everybody's headed in that, like basically working towards that. And so that power disparity sort of recommends the careful selection of a politics. Our resources are finite, theirs are not. Fuck, that's a problem. And the second thing, the reason that it's important is that because politics don't exist in a vacuum, you have to take into consideration your circumstances, the reality of who your opponents are, what you have on your side, and then pick something that matches that reality. Context matters, and therefore the choice of politics has to be compatible with the reality that you exist in. So that's why all this stuff matters. Now, let's go in part 2 to discuss like how we choose.